The satellite images revealed what military intelligence had missed for a decade. Deep in hostile territory, there she was, Commander Elena Reeves, officially listed as deserter, covertly extracting prisoners of war from an enemy black site. The woman they'd branded a traitor had actually been saving the lives they'd abandoned. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The dust under Commander Elena Reeves' fingernails told a different story than the one her former colleagues believed. They saw a disgraced naval officer who had abandoned her post during a critical mission, someone who had betrayed her country and her oath when the pressure became too much. What they didn't see were hands that had once gripped the controls of classified stealth helicopters, navigating through radar detection zones that should have been impenetrable, at treetop level through mountain valleys. Elena, at 34, had learned to become invisible. Her once regulation short brown hair now hung past her shoulders, often hidden beneath a weathered cap. Her lean, muscular frame, built from years of special operations training, was concealed under loose-fitting clothing stained with engine grease and local dust. To everyone in the small border village of Kryev, she was just Anna Petrova, a quiet mechanic who fixed broken-down vehicles without asking questions. The pay was minimal. The work was thankless, but it kept her positioned exactly where she needed to be. 15 miles from Camp Nightshade, an undocumented prison facility that officially didn't exist on any international registry. Her real name was Commander Elena Reeves, but her carefully forged documents identified her as Anna Petrova, refugee. 10 years ago, she had been Phantom, the call sign for the only female pilot in Naval Special Warfare Development Group's classified aviation unit. Now, she repaired trucks and farm equipment, living in self-imposed exile from the world she once served with distinction. Every morning, Elena arrived at her workshop before dawn. Her toolbox contained standard wrenches and screwdrivers any mechanic would carry. But hidden beneath false bottoms and hollow handles lay specialized equipment that would have shocked her neighbors. Night vision components, signal jammers, and a secure satellite communications device more advanced than anything available on the civilian market. The equipment was proof of operations that had never been recorded in any official log. Viktor Baranov, the local garage owner who had reluctantly hired Elena when she first appeared in Kryev, was a gruff man in his 60s who had never served in any military. During coffee breaks, he would complain about her methodical approach to repairs. "You treat every broken tractor like it's a matter of life and death," he would say, not knowing that her precision came from years of maintaining stealth aircraft where a single loose component could mean mission failure and captured personnel. The other mechanics were dismissive of her presence. Nikolai Volkov, recently certified from the Regional Technical School, spent most of his time scrolling through conspiracy theories about foreign military operations instead of completing his work. "Women shouldn't be mechanics anyway," he would mutter when customers weren't around. "They don't have the strength or the mind for real technical work." Elena had learned years ago that defending herself only invited unwanted attention. Questions led to more questions, and in her position, anonymity was essential to survival. So she remained silent, focusing on her work with the same disciplined approach that had once qualified her for the most classified operations in naval aviation history. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had once flown extraction missions for high-value intelligence assets and prisoners of war, protecting her country's most valuable human resources behind enemy lines. Now she repaired aging tractors and delivery trucks for local farmers. But every vehicle she fixed, every engine she rebuilt, was done with the same attention to detail that had once kept elite teams alive in hostile territory. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. One cold autumn afternoon, a group of border officials arrived for vehicle inspections. These were men with military bearing beneath their civilian clothes, wearing expensive tactical watches and carrying themselves with the unmistakable posture of those accustomed to authority. They watched Elena methodically adjusting a transmission using techniques that weren't taught in civilian repair manuals. "Why not use the hydraulic lift?" one of them asked with a smirk, nodding toward the modern equipment Victor had recently installed. "Manual adjustments take 3 times as long. She probably doesn't know how to operate modern equipment," another added, taking photos of the garage for their inspection report. Elena continued working, her hands moving with the muscle memory developed through thousands of hours maintaining military aircraft under combat conditions. She didn't respond to their baiting, but something cold settled in her chest as she recognized the distinctive bulge of a sidearm beneath one man's jacket. These weren't ordinary border officials. The way they scanned the room positioned themselves with sightlines to all entrances and exits. These were intelligence operatives conducting surveillance. She recorded their vehicle numbers in her mental log, a habit from her military days. Every person who visited her workshop was cataloged and analyzed, potential threat or potential ally. That evening, walking back to her small apartment above the local market, Elena passed a military memorial. Faded photos of local soldiers killed in various conflicts lined the stone wall. Heroes with names, ranks, and families who mourned them publicly. Her name wasn't there. Her service would never be acknowledged. The woman who had once extracted 37 intelligence operatives from a compromised safe house during Operation Blackstone was now just Anna Petrova, unmarried mechanic with grease-stained hands. But she had learned to live with her choices, even in exile. She knew she had done what was necessary. The small, secure tablet hidden in a compartment beneath her floorboards contained encrypted files proving it. Those files documented 10 years of unauthorized extraction operations, rescuing prisoners of war from the facility that her own government refused to acknowledge existed. As she climbed the narrow stairs to her apartment, Elena caught her reflection in a darkened window. For just a moment, she saw not the invisible mechanic, but the naval special warfare operator she had once been. The woman who had earned her position through exceptional skill and uncompromising determination, not through special treatment or lowered standards. Tomorrow would bring another day of mundane repairs and watchful caution. But tonight, she would review satellite imagery of Camp Nightshade, where intelligence suggested 3 new prisoners had arrived. American Special Forces operators captured during a mission gone wrong across the border. Operators her government had officially disavowed, claiming they were mercenaries acting without sanction. The encrypted radio hidden in Elena's apartment activated at 2:17 in the morning, using a frequency that only former Special Operations personnel knew existed. She had been reviewing topographical maps of the mountain pass that served as the only viable extraction route when the message broke through standard jamming protocols. 3 eagles caged at Nightshade. Extraction window closes in 72 hours. Official channels compromised. Resources denied. Elena sat up, her heart rate elevating but her mind remaining calm through years of operational discipline. She recognized the code phrases, understood the implications. Somewhere in the mountains beyond her village, 3 American operators were being held at a black site prison while political authorities debated acceptable levels of, quote, plausible deniability. Meanwhile, her intelligence sources confirmed the prisoners would be transferred to a more secure facility in 72 hours, after which extraction would become virtually impossible. She retrieved her go-bag from its hidden compartment, equipment, weapons, and communication devices she had maintained for precisely this scenario. The mountain pass would be heavily monitored. Standard insertion methods would be detected, but Elena had spent 10 years studying the facility's security protocols, identifying the patterns and weaknesses that existed in even the most sophisticated systems. There was a 6-minute window during guard rotation when the southeastern perimeter had reduced surveillance coverage, barely enough time for someone with exceptional skills to breach the outer defenses. As she prepared her equipment, Elena intercepted military communications on her modified radio. Command was refusing to acknowledge the captured operators existed. Too politically sensitive. No official extraction team would be deployed. Standard protocol demanded maintaining operational security even if it meant abandoning personnel, a protocol she had refused to accept 10 years ago when she discovered the truth about Camp Nightshade. Elena entered the 16-digit activation code into her emergency communications device, her fingers moving automatically through a sequence she had memorized a decade earlier. A code that was supposed to have been purged from all systems when she was labeled a deserter. The small screen flickered to life with green text. Authentication accepted. Operative Phantom status active. Her designation, her rank, still in the system after 10 years of official non-existence. She strapped on lightweight body armor beneath her civilian clothes and checked her weapons. Non-standard issue, untraceable, but meticulously maintained with the same precision she once applied to naval aircraft. Tonight wasn't about fighting. It was about extracting prisoners without detection. The best operations were the ones that left no evidence they had ever occurred. The storm masked her approach as she moved through the forest surrounding Camp Nightshade. No perimeter lights, no visible guard towers. The facility maintained the appearance of an abandoned mining operation. But thermal imaging revealed armed personnel at strategic positions, motion sensors disguised as natural elements, and a security system far beyond what would be necessary for a defunct industrial site. Elena had anticipated these measures. For 10 years she had been gathering intelligence on this facility, documenting patrol patterns, identifying blind spots in surveillance coverage. The southeastern approach offered a narrow window where the mountainous terrain created a dead zone in sensor coverage, provided she timed her movement perfectly with the guard rotation. She moved with the disciplined silence that had once earned her the call sign, Phantom, navigating by memory through terrain she had studied exhaustively. The rain concealed her thermal signature from standard sensors, and her customized signal jammer created just enough localized interference to mask her approach without triggering security alerts. The outer perimeter was protected by a sensor grid disguised as standard wildlife deterrent fencing. Elena bypassed it using techniques she had developed during classified operations, creating a temporary corridor through the electronic detection system. She had 18 minutes before the security system would run its automated diagnostic and detect the anomaly. Inside the perimeter, she moved with greater caution, knowing that human observers were more unpredictable than electronic systems. Guards patrolled in patterns designed to appear random while maintaining optimal coverage. But patterns existed in all systems, and Elena had spent years identifying the mathematical certainty beneath the apparent chaos. The detention block was underground, accessible through a service entrance disguised as a maintenance shed. 2 guards stood watch, their posture and equipment identifying them as private military contractors rather than regular forces, mercenaries with no official connection to any government. Deniable assets guarding deniable prisoners. Elena waited for the precise moment when the patrol routes created a 40-second gap in visual coverage. Then she moved, using a specialized aerosol to temporarily blind the security cameras without triggering tampering alerts. The first guard never saw her approach. A precision strike to the vagus nerve rendered him unconscious before he could react. The second guard reached for his weapon but found himself incapacitated by the same technique before his hand closed around the grip. Neither guard would remember her face when they regained consciousness. Neither would have any evidence of what had occurred beyond their own failure. Elena accessed the security system using codes she had intercepted from maintenance communications. The system recognized her as authorized personnel performing a scheduled security check. The detention level required biometric authentication. Elena had prepared for this by obtaining genetic samples from an authorized staff member, collected from discarded items during weeks of surveillance. The synthetic fingerprint film adhered to her own fingertips worked as designed, granting access to restricted areas without triggering security protocols. 3 cells at the end of the corridor held the captured operators. Men who officially didn't exist, being held in a facility that officially didn't exist, for reasons that would never appear in any official record. Elena overrode the cell security using command codes extracted from intercepted communications. The doors opened silently, revealing 3 men in various states of physical distress but still conscious and mobile. "Who the hell are you?" whispered the first operator, a captain judging by the way the others responded to his presence. His face was bruised, but his eyes remained alert and assessing. "Extraction team," Elena replied simply, providing identification codes that only American Special Operations personnel would recognize. "We have 18 minutes to reach the extraction point before security protocols reset." The captain's eyes narrowed. Command said no extraction was coming. Too politically sensitive. "Command isn't running this operation," Elena answered, distributing lightweight tactical gear from her pack. "I am, and I don't leave people behind." As they moved through the facility, using service corridors mapped through years of intelligence gathering, the captain studied Elena with increasing recognition. "You're Phantom," he said suddenly. "The pilot who disappeared 10 years ago. They told us you deserted your post and betrayed your country." Elena continued navigating the complex escape route without breaking stride. They told you what the official record says. The truth is more complicated. They said you abandoned your team during a critical mission, another operator added, his voice carrying the distinctive accent of the American Midwest. I abandoned a mission that was compromised from the start, Elena corrected. I discovered that Camp Nightshade was being used to hold our own people. Operators declared KIA, but actually captured and disavowed for political convenience. When I reported it through proper channels, I was ordered to forget what I'd seen. I chose a different path. The third operator, moving with a noticeable limp but keeping pace, studied her with new understanding. You've been running unauthorized extraction operations for 10 years, he said. All those stories about ghost rescues, operators who mysteriously escaped impossible situations, that was you. Elena didn't confirm or deny, focusing instead on navigating the dangerous exit route. They reached the perimeter fence just as the security system began its diagnostic cycle. 18 minutes exactly. She guided them through the temporary corridor in the sensor grid moments before it reactivated. In the forest beyond the perimeter, Elena led them through ravines and gullies that wouldn't appear on standard topographical maps, features she had identified through years of reconnaissance. The extraction point was a clearing 3 miles from the facility, close enough to reach before dawn, but far enough to avoid standard search patterns. As they waited in concealed positions, the captain approached Elena. Why risk everything for people you don't know? You had a career, a future. Now you're what, a mechanic in some border village? I was a naval special warfare operator before anything else, Elena replied. That means we don't leave our people behind, even when command says we must. Some oaths matter more than others. The sound of approaching rotors cut through the night air. Distinctive in its rhythm, a stealth helicopter modified for reduced acoustic signature. No visible lights, no standard IFF transponder broadcasting its identity, another ghost that officially didn't exist. As the helicopter touched down, Elena saw the pilot, Commander Marcus Santiago, another operator who had supposedly died in a training accident 5 years earlier. The truth was more complex. Santiago had discovered the same network of black site prisons and chosen the same path Elena had, official non-existence in service to abandoned personnel. You're not coming with us, Santiago said as the operators boarded. It wasn't a question. Someone needs to maintain the network, Elena replied. Someone needs to be here for the next extraction. Santiago nodded once, understanding the sacrifice she continued to make. Command is starting to notice patterns. 10 years of ghost rescues. They're connecting dots. Let them connect, Elena said. By the time they figure it out, we'll have brought everyone home. As the helicopter lifted off, disappearing into the storm clouds, Elena began the long trek back to the village. By dawn, she would be Anna Petrova again, quiet mechanic with grease-stained hands. The woman nobody noticed or remembered, but somewhere across the ocean, 3 operators who had been abandoned by their government would return home to families who had thought them lost forever. And in the system that had declared her a deserter, another successful ghost rescue would be recorded as an unexplained security anomaly at a facility that officially didn't exist. The satellite monitoring that region would show nothing unusual, just forest and abandoned mining operations. The truth would remain hidden for now, like Elena herself, working in plain sight while invisible to those who had once commanded her. As dawn broke over the mountains, Elena reached the edge of Krya village. In 6 hours, she would open her workshop and begin another day of fixing broken machines. Her hands would be steady, her mind focused. The same discipline that had made her an exceptional special operations pilot now made her an exceptional mechanic. And if any of the border officials returned to watch her work, they would see nothing but a woman skilled with tools and engines. What they wouldn't see was the network she had built over 10 years, other ghosts like herself, operators who had discovered the truth and chosen to serve in shadows rather than abandon their comrades. Santiago was one. There were others, positioned strategically near other facilities, maintaining other extraction routes. They called themselves the Phantom Network, a reference to her original call sign and their official non-existence. They operated without authority, without recognition, without the support structure that had once defined their military careers. But they operated with purpose that transcended official authorization. Elena knew the military judges who had declared her a deserter would never understand her choices. They lived in a world of regulations and chain of command, where following orders was the highest virtue. But she had learned a different truth on the ground. Sometimes orders conflicted with the deeper oaths of service, and when they did, a true operator made the harder choice. The military tribunal had declared Elena Reeves guilty in absentia, desertion during wartime operations, theft of classified equipment, unauthorized access to restricted intelligence. The verdict was delivered in a sterile Pentagon conference room, witnessed only by officials with appropriate security clearances. No press. No public record. Just the quiet, bureaucratic elimination of Commander Elena Reeves from all active personnel files. What the tribunal never considered was that Elena's supposed crimes had saved more lives than most decorated heroes. That while they deliberated her punishment in climate-controlled rooms, she was pulling a wounded Army Ranger from a hidden detention facility in hostile territory. 3 months after extracting the 3 American operators from Camp Nightshade, Elena maintained her cover as mechanic Anna Petrova. Her routine remained unchanged. Rising before dawn, working until sunset, observing everything while appearing to notice nothing. But something in the village had shifted. The border officials who had visited her workshop returned more frequently, their inspections becoming increasingly thorough. Victor noticed their interest. "These officials seem very concerned about our little garage," he commented one evening as they closed for the day. 3 inspections in 1 month. Very unusual. Elena continued cleaning her tools, her movements deliberate and unhurried. "Perhaps they have nothing better to do." "Perhaps," Victor agreed, watching her with new intensity. "Or perhaps they are looking for someone." The statement hung between them, an unspoken question that Elena chose not to answer. Victor was no fool. He had managed this garage for 40 years, surviving regime changes and economic collapse through careful observation and strategic silence. If he suspected her identity wasn't what she claimed, he had chosen not to mention it until now. "My son was a soldier," Victor continued when Elena remained silent. "He never returned from his deployment. The military said he died in a helicopter crash. No body was recovered." Elena paused in her work, hearing the subtext beneath his words. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you." Victor watched her hands as she meticulously organized her tools. "The strange thing is, 3 years after his supposed death, I received a package. No return address, just a photograph of my son standing beside a fishing boat in a coastal village 2,000 miles from here. He looked older, his beard was different. But a father knows his child." Elena met his gaze steadily. "That must have been confusing for you." "Yes." "Very confusing." Victor's weathered face revealed nothing. "Almost as confusing as having a mechanic who handles tools like they were aircraft controls and maintains engines with military precision." The moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken understanding. Then Victor nodded once and continued his closing routine. "Whatever reason the officials have for their interest, I suggest you be careful, Anna. Some questions are better left unasked." That night, Elena's secure communication device activated with an encrypted message. "Satellite surveillance increased in your sector. Command suspicious of extraction patterns. Recommend immediate relocation." The message came from Commander Santiago, her fellow Ghost operator and occasional extraction pilot. If Santiago was concerned enough to break communication protocols, the situation was deteriorating faster than she had anticipated. Elena began preparations for emergency evacuation, packing only essentials and classified equipment that couldn't be compromised. But evacuation meant abandoning her position near Camp Nightshade, leaving future prisoners without extraction support. It meant surrendering the network she had spent 10 years building. More importantly, it meant abandoning her current mission, locating and extracting Victor's son, Lieutenant Mikhail Baranov, whose intelligence suggested was being held at a secondary facility 50 miles north of Nightshade. Elena made her decision. She would complete this final mission before disappearing. Not for herself, but for the quiet garage owner who had given her cover and protection without asking the questions he clearly wanted answered. Victor deserved to know if his son was truly alive, and if so, he deserved the chance to see him again. The secure tablet hidden beneath her floorboards contained years of intelligence on regional black site facilities, information gathered through painstaking observation and unauthorized access to classified communications. The secondary facility, codenamed Frost Point, was smaller than Nightshade but more isolated, built into the side of a mountain with a single access road and minimal electronic footprint. Intelligence suggested it held fewer than 10 prisoners, high-value detainees kept separate from the main facility. If Lieutenant Baranov was still alive, that's where he would be held. Elena studied satellite imagery of the surrounding terrain, identifying approach vectors and potential extraction routes. The facility's isolation made it more difficult to access, but also meant fewer regular patrols and security checkpoints. A successful extraction would require precise timing and specialized equipment, particularly since she would be operating without Santiago's helicopter support. Too risky with increased satellite surveillance. This would be a ground extraction, which meant a longer, more dangerous overland journey to reach the nearest safe border crossing. As she finalized her plans, Elena noticed unusual activity in the village. Vehicles with government plates moving through streets normally empty after dark. Military presence disguised as administrative personnel. Communication vans positioned at strategic locations. They were looking for someone, and with growing urgency, her encrypted radio intercepted fragments of military communications. Confirmed pattern matches, ghost extractions. Satellite tracking indicates. Asset designation. Phantom. Authorization for immediate apprehension. They knew. After 10 years of ghost operations, military intelligence had finally connected enough dots to identify her location. The border officials hadn't been conducting random inspections. They had been confirming her identity before initiating capture operations. Elena had perhaps hours before they moved against her. She sent one final encrypted message to Santiago. Proceeding with Frost Point extraction. Compromised position. No support required. Will contact at Secure Point Delta if successful. Santiago's response was immediate. Negative. Abort mission. EXFIL immediately. Military intelligence deploying special activities team to your location. Elena powered down the communication device without responding. Santiago was right about the risk, but some missions transcended rational risk assessment. Finding Victor's son would be her final act as Phantom, a promise kept to the man who had protected her without understanding why. She left her apartment through a maintenance access route she had identified when she first arrived, avoiding the surveillance positions she had mapped over the past 3 years. The military intelligence team would be watching obvious exit routes, but Elena had prepared for this contingency since her first day in Kryev. The maintenance tunnel connected to drainage systems that extended beyond the village perimeter, allowing her to bypass security checkpoints entirely. By the time military intelligence realized she had slipped their perimeter, Elena was already 5 miles into the mountains, moving through terrain too difficult for standard pursuit vehicles. Frost Point facility lay 20 miles north, approximately 8 hours of difficult travel on foot through mountainous terrain. Elena moved with the discipline of her special operations training, maintaining optimal pace while preserving energy for the extraction ahead. The increased satellite surveillance meant she needed to utilize natural cover whenever possible, traveling through ravines and beneath dense forest canopy to minimize detection risk. Military communications continued to crackle through her modified receiver. The Special Activities Team had discovered her absence and deployed search patterns based on standard evasion protocols. But Elena had never followed standard protocols. It was why she had remained undetected for 10 years while other operatives were captured or killed. 6 hours into her journey, Elena reached the observation point overlooking Frost Point facility. Unlike the larger Nightshade complex, Frost Point was integrated into the natural mountain landscape, a hardened bunker with minimal external features. Security focused on restricted access rather than perimeter defense. A single road led to reinforced entrance doors built into the rock face. Elena studied guard rotations and security systems through high-powered optics. Fewer personnel than Nightshade, but more elite. These weren't private military contractors, but special forces operators with advanced training. Breaking in would be virtually impossible. But Elena wasn't planning to break in. 10 years of ghost operations had taught her that sometimes the best approach wasn't forcing entry, but creating circumstances where the facility voluntarily opened its doors. The facility's isolated location meant it depended on regular supply deliveries: water, food, medical supplies, all transported via armored vehicles that arrived on precise schedules. Elena had tracked these deliveries during previous reconnaissance missions, identifying the security protocols that governed access. A supply truck was scheduled to arrive within 2 hours. The final delivery before Elena's position would be compromised by the approaching Special Activities team. She moved into position along the single-access road, prepared to execute the most dangerous phase of her mission. The armored supply truck appeared exactly on schedule, navigating the winding mountain road with the precision of a route driven hundreds of times before. 2 personnel in the cab, driver and security escort, standard procedure for a facility that officially didn't exist. Elena disabled the truck using a specialized EMP device designed to temporarily disrupt vehicle electronics without causing permanent damage. As the truck rolled to a stop, she approached in the uniform of Regional Border Security, a disguise prepared months earlier for precisely this contingency. Identification and manifest, she demanded in the local language, presenting falsified credentials that would withstand cursory inspection. Special inspection due to security alert in this sector. The security escort examined her credentials while the driver remained at the wheel. "We weren't notified of any inspection," the escort said, hand casually moving toward his sidearm. "That's the point of a security alert," Elena replied with the irritation of a bureaucrat following inconvenient procedures. "Standard communications might be compromised. That's why I was sent personally, rather than notification being transmitted." The escort hesitated, protocol conflicting with suspicion. Elena maintained her impatient bureaucratic persona, sighing heavily. "Call your facility security if you want verification. Though they'll be just as annoyed as you are about the delay. Headquarters doesn't care that we're all wasting time in a security drill." The subtle redirection worked. Rather than immediately suspecting infiltration, the escort interpreted the situation as typical administrative inefficiency, different departments failing to coordinate properly. He radioed the facility while Elena examined the truck's exterior, positioning herself strategically near the driver's door. When the escort turned to relay information from facility security, Elena moved. The driver was unconscious before he could react, incapacitated with a nerve strike rather than lethal force. The escort managed to draw his weapon before Elena disarmed him with a precision technique taught only to elite special operations units. "You're not border security," the escort gasped as recognition dawned in his eyes. "You're..." Elena delivered a precisely calculated strike that rendered him unconscious before he could complete the identification. Both men would recover fully, but neither would remember exactly what had happened. Concussive amnesia was a convenient side effect of the technique when properly applied. She secured both men with their own restraints, then changed into the driver's uniform. The disguise wouldn't withstand close inspection, but it only needed to get her through the initial security checkpoint. Once inside, she would rely on her intelligence of the facility's layout and personnel rotations. Facility security, growing concerned about the delayed response from the supply truck, sent a secondary communication. Elena responded using the driver's radio, imitating his speech patterns based on the brief interaction she had observed. "Vehicle experienced temporary electronics failure. Systems rebooting now. Will proceed to entrance in 5 minutes." Elena drove the final distance to the facility entrance, maintaining the unhurried pace of routine delivery. The massive reinforced doors opened as the truck approached, the crucial moment when Frostpoint willingly breached its own security to admit what it believed was an authorized vehicle. Inside the receiving bay, 2 security personnel approached for standard inspection. Elena had anticipated this protocol and was prepared with the appropriate documentation, manifest papers and delivery authorization visible on the passenger seat. As the first guard approached the driver's window, Elena triggered a specialized aerosol device that released a fast-acting sedative gas into the enclosed receiving bay. Both guards collapsed before they could trigger alarms. Elena sealed her uniform with an integrated respiratory system, then proceeded into the facility's main corridor. Her intelligence on Frostpoint's layout guided her through service passages used for maintenance access, routes less monitored than main corridors. According to intelligence, detainee cells were located on the lowest level, accessible only through security checkpoints with biometric authentication. Elena bypassed the checkpoints by accessing maintenance ducts designed for ventilation system servicing. The narrow passages would be impossible for someone without her specialized training in physical conditioning, which is precisely why security protocols considered them impassable. Emerging from the ventilation system near the detention level, Elena encountered her first significant obstacle: two guards stationed at the entrance to the detainee corridor. Unlike the receiving bay, this area couldn't be compromised with aerosol tactics without risking detainees' safety. Direct confrontation was unavoidable. Elena approached openly, maintaining the posture and bearing of authorized personnel. The guards registered her presence but not immediate threat, a critical hesitation that gave her the advantage she needed. The first guard was incapacitated with a throat strike before he could sound an alarm. The second managed to reach for his weapon before Elena neutralized him with a precision nerve strike. The detention level contained 8 cells, each with a reinforced door and electronic monitoring system. Elena accessed the central monitoring station using access codes extracted from intercepted communications. The security system identified each detainee by numerical designation rather than name, a deliberate dehumanization tactic used in black site operations. She located cell designation 47B, which intelligence suggested might hold Lieutenant Mikhail Baranov. The monitoring system showed a single occupant male, approximately 35 years of age, detained for 8 years. The time frame matched Victor's description of his son's disappearance. Elena overrode the security lock using command codes extracted from facility communications. The reinforced door opened with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a sparse cell with a single occupant. The man who looked up at her entrance bore little resemblance to the military photograph in her intelligence file. His frame was thinner, his beard streaked with premature gray, his eyes holding the wary calculation of someone who had survived years of captivity. But the underlying facial structure matched Viktor Baranov's description of his son. This was Lieutenant Mikhail Baranov 8 years after his supposed death in a helicopter crash. "Who are you?" Baranov asked in a hoarse voice, his eyes assessing Elena with military precision despite years of detainment. "Someone who made a promise." Elena replied, providing identification codes that only legitimate military personnel would recognize. "Your father sent me." Baranov's composed expression faltered for the first time. "My father? Viktor Baranov is alive?" "Very much alive, and he's been looking for you for 8 years. Elena checked the corridor before continuing. "We have approximately 12 minutes to reach the extraction point before facility security protocols reset." Baranov studied her with increasing recognition as they moved through the facility using maintenance corridors. "You're not standard military," he observed. "Your movement patterns and tactical awareness, your special operations." "Former special operations," Elena corrected, guiding him through a service passage that would bypass the main security checkpoint. "No such thing as former," Baranov replied with the first hint of a smile. "Once operator, always operator. Even in a place like this, I recognize the signs. The way you entered the room. The way you maintain awareness of all angles simultaneously. The economy of your movements." As they reached the loading bay where the supply truck waited, Baranov suddenly stopped. "There are 7 other detainees in this facility. People who've been officially declared dead or missing. People whose governments abandoned them." Elena had anticipated this objection. It was the same moral dilemma she had faced during her first unauthorized extraction 10 years earlier. The impossibility of saving everyone without compromising the mission entirely. "I know," she acknowledged. "And if I could extract them all without guaranteeing failure, I would. But facility security will detect our absence within minutes. A larger extraction would require resources I don't currently have." "Then leave me and take someone else," Baranov said firmly. "Someone who has been here longer. Someone without family still searching for them." Elena recognized the moral courage in his request, the willingness to sacrifice his own freedom for others who might need it more. It was the same courage that had led her to become Phantom in the first place. "Your father has spent 8 years believing you might still be alive," she replied. "I made him a promise. But I also make you this promise. I will return for the others. Not today, but they will not be forgotten." The determination in her voice convinced him where arguments about practicality had failed. Baranov nodded once, accepting her word as the oath of one operator to another. They reached the supply truck without further obstacles. Elena had calculated the sedative's duration precisely. The guards would remain unconscious just long enough for their departure, but would recover without permanent effects. She had never believed in unnecessary casualties, even among those who served a system she had come to distrust. As they drove through the facility's reinforced doors, Baranov studied her profile with growing recognition. "I know who you are," he said quietly. "You're Phantom, the ghost operator who disappeared 10 years ago. They told us you deserted your post and betrayed classified operations." Elena maintained her focus on navigating the treacherous mountain road at optimal speed. "The official record says many things. Some of them are even true. They said you abandoned your team during a critical extraction," Baranov continued. "But there were other stories, whispers among special operations personnel about unauthorized rescues of abandoned operators. Missions that couldn't officially happen conducted by a pilot who officially didn't exist." "Stories can be useful," Elena replied. "They create possibilities in impossible situations. They give hope to people who have been abandoned by the systems meant to protect them." The mountain road provided limited routes for evasion, which meant their escape would be detected once facility security regained consciousness. Elena had anticipated this vulnerability and prepared multiple contingency routes, including an abandoned mining trail that diverged from the main road 15 kilometers from the facility. The trail was barely visible, overgrown after years of disuse. The supply truck wasn't designed for such terrain, but Elena navigated the difficult path with the same precision she had once applied to stealth helicopters in combat conditions. "Where are we going?" Baranov asked as the truck lurched over uneven ground. "To meet your father," Elena replied. "There's a safe house near the eastern border. Victor will meet us there." "And after that?" Elena didn't immediately answer. After completing this mission, her position in Kryev would be irrevocably compromised. Military intelligence had already identified her as Phantom. The Special Activities Team was closing in on her location. 10 years of careful anonymity had finally reached its inevitable conclusion. "After that, we disappear," she said finally. "Your father has made arrangements to relocate to a coastal village where questions aren't asked about new residents. You'll need a new identity, new documentation. The life you had before is gone, but you'll have the chance to build something new." "And you?" Baranov pressed. "What happens to Phantom after this mission?" Elena guided the truck around a particularly treacherous curve before responding. "Phantom disappears. The ghost operation ends. But the network continues through others who made the same choice I did, to honor the deeper obligations of service even when official channels fail. The mining trail eventually connected to a forgotten forest road that led toward the eastern border." Elena maintained communication silence, knowing that any transmission might be intercepted by military intelligence assets now actively searching for her. The truck's progress was slower than optimal, but the route avoided standard search patterns and checkpoint locations. As they approached the border region, Elena detected increased military communications on emergency frequencies. The Special Activities Team had discovered the Frost Point extraction and deployed additional resources to intercept them. The border crossings would be monitored. Aerial surveillance would be tracking all vehicle movements in the region. "We're being hunted," Baranov observed, noting Elena's increased vigilance. "Yes," she confirmed. "The Special Activities Division has been tracking my operations for months. They've identified patterns in the extractions, connected them to my movements. This will be my final mission as Phantom." The safe house stood isolated at the edge of a dense forest, its weathered exterior deliberately unremarkable. Inside, Viktor Baranov paced nervously, checking his watch every few minutes. The old mechanic had aged 10 years in the 3 days since Elena had disappeared from the village. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he peered through dusty curtains at the approaching dawn. "They should have been here by now," he muttered to Commander Santiago, who sat calmly at a wooden table, cleaning a disassembled sidearm with practiced precision. "Elena has never missed an extraction window," Santiago replied, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had witnessed her capabilities firsthand. "If she's delayed, there's a tactical reason. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." Victor wasn't reassured. The military has been swarming through Kyiv since she left. Checkpoints on every road, helicopter surveillance. They're hunting her like she's an enemy of the state instead of a hero who saved their abandoned soldiers. Santiago reassembled his weapon with fluid efficiency. That's the paradox of what we do. The same government that abandons its operators will deploy every resource to capture those who rescue them, not because we're enemies, but because we represent a failure they can't acknowledge. 20 miles from the safe house, Elena and Mikhail had abandoned the supply truck when military checkpoints made road travel too dangerous. They continued on foot, through difficult terrain, navigating by stars and Elena's exceptional topographical memory. The Special Activities team had deployed thermal imaging drones to search for heat signatures in the region, forcing them to travel only during the coldest pre-dawn hours, when their body heat would be less detectable against the environmental background. "We're being tracked by professionals," Elena explained as they paused in a rocky overhang that provided momentary shelter. "Special Activities Division operators, the same unit I trained with before discovering what was happening at Camp Nightshade." Mikhail studied her with growing understanding. "You were one of them. That's how you know their tactics so well." "I was Naval Special Warfare Development Group," Elena confirmed. "Specialized in extraction operations in denied territories. Trained to rescue the people our government couldn't officially acknowledge. Until you discovered they were deliberately abandoning some of those people," Mikhail finished. "Operators like me, whose missions were too politically sensitive to acknowledge if compromised." Elena checked their surroundings before continuing. The official term was mission-critical deniability. If captured during certain operations, personnel would be disavowed, officially declared killed in training accidents or other plausible scenarios. No extraction would be attempted, no acknowledgement would be made. "A convenient system for politicians who want plausible deniability," Mikhail observed bitterly. "Convenient for everyone except the operators who trusted the system to bring them home," Elena agreed. "When I discovered the truth, I reported it through proper channels. My commanding officer assured me the situation would be addressed at the highest levels. Let me guess. Nothing changed." Elena's expression hardened with the memory. "Worse than nothing. 3 weeks later, I was tasked with an extraction operation in this region. Standard mission parameters: retrieve an intelligence asset from hostile territory. But something felt wrong about the operational planning. Too many last-minute changes. Too many communication restrictions. They were setting you up," Mikhail realized. "The extraction point was compromised before we arrived. Ambush waiting. I recognized the pattern from previous compromised operations and diverted my team to a secondary landing zone. That decision saved their lives but violated direct orders. When we returned to base, I was immediately detained for insubordination and security review." "And that's when you disappeared?" Elena nodded. "During the security review, I accessed classified files confirming my suspicions. Camp Nightshade wasn't an anomaly. It was part of a systematic program to maintain operational deniability by sacrificing captured personnel. Dozens of operators officially declared dead were actually being held in black site facilities like Nightshade and Frostpoint. So you went rogue to save them when the system wouldn't," Mikhail concluded. "I made a choice," Elena corrected, "between following orders and honoring the deeper oath to leave no one behind. The system labeled me a deserter. The military courts declared me guilty of treason, but every operator I've extracted knows the truth." Their conversation was interrupted by the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors approaching from the north, military search patterns moving systematically across the terrain. Elena motioned Mikhail to deeper cover as the aircraft passed overhead, its spotlights sweeping across the forest floor below. "They're using predictive search algorithms," she observed. "Standard procedure when tracking high-value targets through difficult terrain. They'll establish a theoretical model of our most likely route and concentrate resources accordingly." "So we take the least likely route," Mikhail suggested, his tactical thinking still sharp despite years of imprisonment. "Exactly. They expect us to move east toward the border. Instead, we'll double back northwest before cutting directly south through the mining complex. It's a longer route, but less predictable. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. As they navigated through the abandoned mining tunnels, Mikhail studied Elena with increasing curiosity. 10 years of ghost operations. Always one step ahead of military intelligence. Never captured, never compromised. How many operators have you extracted in that time? 73, Elena replied without hesitation. Operators from 12 different nations, all officially declared dead or missing in action. All abandoned by systems that valued political convenience over the lives of their own people. And you never considered stopping? Disappearing completely, instead of continuing to risk everything? Elena's pace never faltered as she led them through the darkness. I considered it. Especially after the first few years, when military intelligence began connecting patterns in the extractions. It would have been safer to vanish entirely, establish a new identity somewhere beyond their reach. What stopped you? The same thing that would have stopped you if our positions were reversed, Elena replied. The knowledge that there were still people in those facilities counting on someone to remember they existed. They emerged from the mining tunnels near dawn, the eastern horizon lightening to pale gray. The safe house lay approximately 8 miles south, within reach if they maintained optimal pace and avoided detection, but the increased helicopter activity suggested the Special Activities team had narrowed their search parameters, concentrating resources in their vicinity. Elena's modified receiver intercepted tactical communications that confirmed her suspicions. The team had located the abandoned supply truck and calculated their likely direction of travel. Search patterns were tightening around their position. Ground teams were deploying to strategic intercept locations. They're closing in, she informed Mikhail. We need to change tactics. Rather than continuing to evade, Elena made a decisive shift to direct confrontation, engaging the Special Activities team on her terms rather than playing a defensive game she would eventually lose. It was a calculated risk, but one that leveraged her intimate knowledge of their operational procedures. Standard Special Activities Protocol dictates a primary command position coordinating all search assets, she explained as they positioned themselves on elevated terrain overlooking a forest clearing. Find that position, disrupt their command structure, and we create the window we need to reach the safe house. Using specialized optics, Elena identified the command position, a mobile operations center disguised as a forestry service vehicle, positioned on the main access road 2 miles from their location. The vehicle coordinated all search assets through encrypted communications, maintaining tactical control of the entire operation. We can't approach directly, Mikhail observed. Too many security layers. We don't need to, Elena replied. Just need to disrupt their communications long enough to create confusion in the search pattern. From her tactical pack, Elena retrieved a specialized electronic warfare device, compact but powerful, designed to create targeted communications interference without being easily traceable. The device had been part of her contingency equipment for precisely this scenario. This will create a 40-minute disruption in their tactical communications, she explained. During that window, search teams will default to predetermined rally points rather than continuing coordinated operations. And we use that window to slip past their perimeter, Mikhail concluded, appreciating the tactical elegance of the approach. Elena activated the device, setting it to trigger after a 15-minute delay. Enough time for them to reposition before communications disruption alerted the team to interference. They moved south along a ridgeline that provided concealment while offering optimal observation of search team movements. When the device activated, the effect was immediately visible. Helicopter search patterns became erratic as pilots lost contact with the command center. Ground teams halted their advance, establishing defensive positions while attempting to re-establish communications. The carefully coordinated search operation dissolved into isolated units following contingency protocols. Elena guided Mikhail through the resulting gaps in the search perimeter, utilizing terrain features and timing their movements to coincide with the predictable responses of teams following standard procedures. Her intimate knowledge of special activities tactics transformed what should have been an impossible evasion into a carefully orchestrated passage through their lines. They reached the outer perimeter of the safe house location just as the electronic warfare device's effects began to fade. Helicopter communications were being re-established. Ground teams were reporting positions and resuming coordinated search patterns. The window was closing rapidly. The safe house appeared abandoned, no external lights, no visible movement, But Elena recognized the subtle security measures integrated into the perimeter, passive sensors and observation points that would alert those inside to potential threats. She approached using recognition protocols established years earlier with Santiago, signaling their identity to prevent defensive response. Viktor Baranov was waiting at the door when they emerged from the forest edge. The old mechanic stood frozen for a moment, staring at the son he had believed dead for 8 years. Then he was moving, crossing the distance between them with surprising speed for a man his age, embracing Mikhail with desperate intensity. "I knew," Viktor whispered, his voice breaking. "I knew you were alive. When no body was recovered. When they refused to answer my questions. I knew." Mikhail returned his father's embrace with equal intensity, the composed military discipline giving way to raw emotion. "They told us everyone believed we were dead, that no one was looking for us anymore." "I never stopped looking," Viktor replied. "Never stopped asking questions, even when they threatened me with criminal charges for interfering with military operations. Then Elena, came to the village, and somehow I knew she was different. Knew she might be the one person who could find you." Inside the safe house, Commander Santiago was already preparing for immediate evacuation. "Military intelligence has narrowed the search perimeter," he reported. "We have maybe 30 minutes before they identify this location." Elena accessed Santiago's tactical communications equipment, reviewing real-time intelligence on search team positions. The Special Activities Division had recovered quickly from the communications disruption, adapting their search patterns based on last known movement directions. They were implementing concentric search methodology, systematically eliminating potential hiding locations within the operational area. "The extraction plan is compromised," she concluded. "They've deployed assets to all viable exit routes. Standard vehicle extraction is no longer viable." Santiago nodded grimly. "I anticipated that possibility. There's an alternative extraction option, but it's extremely high risk." He unfolded a topographical map, indicating a narrow valley 6 miles southwest of their position. "Remote helicopter extraction. Extremely limited window due to terrain restrictions and detection risk. Pilot can hold position for maximum of 90 seconds before exposure risk becomes critical." Elena studied the extraction point, calculating distances and movement parameters against known search patterns. "We can reach the location, but Special Activities will detect the helicopter the moment it enters the valley. They'll deploy intercept assets immediately." "That's where I come in," Santiago replied with grim determination. "I'll create a diversion at the northern perimeter. Draw their attention and resources away from the extraction corridor." Elena recognized what Santiago was proposing. A sacrificial diversion that would likely result in his capture. "That's not acceptable. There must be another option." "There isn't," Santiago said firmly. "Not with the resources we have available and the time constraints we're facing. This was always the endgame, Elena. We've operated as ghosts for 10 years, knowing eventually the system would catch up to us. The network matters more than any individual operator." Elena understood the tactical logic but rejected the premise. "The network exists because we refuse to abandon our people. I won't start now by leaving you behind." "You're not abandoning me," Santiago countered. "You're completing the mission. Getting Mikhail and Viktor to safety ensures everything we've fought for continues. The 73 operators we've already extracted. The support network we've built. The truth we've protected about what happens in places like Nightshade and Frost Point." Before Elena could argue further, military communications, intercepted by their receiver, indicated that search teams had identified suspicious activity near the safe house perimeter. The Special Activities Division was redirecting assets to their location. Their evacuation window was closing rapidly. "This isn't a debate," Santiago said with finality. "This is operational necessity. You taught me that sometimes the mission requires sacrifices that seem impossible to accept. That's why you became Phantom in the first place. Because you understood what really matters." Elena recognized her own principles reflected back at her, the unyielding commitment to the deeper purpose that had guided her actions for 10 years. Santiago was right. The mission had always been bigger than any individual operator, even herself. 30 minutes, she conceded finally. "You create the diversion, draw their attention north. We move to the extraction point and evacuate with the civilians. But after that, the network initiates Protocol Lazarus." Santiago's expression registered surprise. "Lazarus is theoretical. We've never actually implemented it. We've never needed to, Elena replied, but I won't leave you in their hands. Not after what we've seen happen to operators in places like Frost Point. Protocol Lazarus was the most closely guarded contingency in the Phantom network, a theoretical extraction plan for situations where an operator was captured by their own government. It required resources and coordination beyond standard operations, leveraging political and media pressure alongside tactical intervention. It had been designed but never implemented, considered too high risk, and too potentially damaging to the entire network. You risk everything, Santiago warned. The entire network. All the operators still in position near facilities like Nightshade. We risk everything by abandoning our principles, Elena countered. The moment we start sacrificing our own people for operational convenience, we become exactly what we've been fighting against for 10 years. Santiago studied her with newfound respect, recognizing that Elena's moral certainty had never wavered despite a decade of operating in the shadows. Where others might have compromised over time, her commitment to the fundamental principle, leave no one behind, remained absolute. 30 minutes, he agreed finally. I create the diversion, you evacuate the civilians. Then you do what you've always done, the impossible. They prepared for evacuation with the efficient precision of experienced operators. Victor and Mikhail were provided with essential equipment and basic tactical instruction. Escape routes were reviewed, communication protocols established. Every detail methodically addressed with the calm focus that had kept Elena alive through 10 years of unauthorized operations in hostile territory. Stay with Elena, Santiago instructed the civilians. Follow her directions exactly. No questions, no hesitation. She's the best extraction specialist I've ever worked with. If anyone can get you out safely, it's her. 28 minutes later, Santiago departed on his diversionary mission, heading north through dense forest terrain with deliberate noise and visible trail markers, the opposite of standard evasion protocols. His objective was to draw special activities assets away from the southern extraction corridor, creating the window Elena needed to reach the helicopter pickup point. Elena led Victor and Mikhail south, moving through the forest with careful balance between speed and stealth. The older man struggled with the difficult terrain, but his determination never wavered. The extraction point lay 4 miles ahead, approximately 50 minutes of movement at their current pace. Santiago's diversion produced immediate results. Elena's receiver intercepted tactical communications, redirecting multiple search teams north in response to confirmed target sighting. Helicopter assets were redeployed to establish containment perimeter. Ground teams converged on Santiago's deliberately obvious trail markers. For 30 precious minutes, the southern corridor remained relatively clear of search assets. Elena pushed their pace, knowing the tactical situation could change at any moment. 3 miles to extraction. Then 2. The valley that would serve as their helicopter landing zone appeared ahead, a narrow corridor between steep, rocky slopes. Then military communications indicated a critical shift in the tactical situation. Santiago had been cornered by special activities teams, engaged in direct confrontation rather than continued evasion. The communications revealed professional respect as they reported engaging, a highly trained operator demonstrating exceptional tactical proficiency. Elena's heart constricted at the clinical description of Santiago, fighting for his life to buy them time. But she maintained her focus on the mission, guiding Victor and Mikhail toward the extraction point with unwavering discipline. The helicopter would arrive in 18 minutes. They needed to be in position, ready for immediate boarding during the 90-second window. They reached the valley floor with 12 minutes remaining. Elena positioned Victor and Mikhail in a concealed location with optimal access to the designated landing zone, then established observation position to monitor potential threats. The valley appeared clear of search teams, but she detected faint communications suggesting assets were being redirected from the northern operation. Santiago had been captured. The Special Activities Division was refocusing on potential extraction routes, implementing predictive analysis to identify likely evacuation methods. It would be minutes, not hours, before they identified the valley as a potential helicopter extraction point. 9 minutes to extraction. Elena detected vehicle movement on access roads leading toward the valley, ground teams repositioning to establish containment. 7 minutes. Aerial assets were being redirected to establish observation grid over potential evacuation routes. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. 5 minutes to extraction. Elena's receiver intercepted communications confirming their worst-case scenario. Satellite detection of unauthorized aircraft approaching restricted airspace. Intercept assets deploying. Estimated arrival at current vector, 7 minutes. Their extraction helicopter had been detected by military satellite surveillance. Fighter intercept was deploying to force it to land or shoot it down if it refused. The entire operation was unraveling as military intelligence deployed its full technological advantage against them. But Elena had operated for 10 years against those same technological advantages, developing countermeasures and contingency plans for every possible scenario. She activated an emergency broadcast on military frequencies, a direct communication to the Special Activities Division command structure. Special Activities Command, this is Operative Phantom. I am transmitting live satellite footage of black site facilities designated Nightshade and Frostpoint to major media outlets in 3 minutes, unless all aerial intercept operations are suspended immediately. It was a calculated gamble, leveraging the government's fear of exposure against their determination to capture her. The black site facilities represented decades of deniable operations, political compromises, and systematic violations of international law. Their exposure would create diplomatic crises and domestic political fallout beyond calculation. 2 minutes to extraction. Elena's receiver remained silent. No response from command, no change in intercept operations. She prepared to execute her threat. Accessing secured communications channels connected to media contacts cultivated over years of ghost operations. Then, with 90 seconds to extraction, military communications erupted with urgent command overrides. All aerial assets returned to base immediately. Mission parameters canceled by direct presidential authority. Repeat. All operations suspended effective immediately. Elena's gamble had worked. The potential exposure of black site operations represented a political risk too great to accept, even in exchange for capturing Phantom. The extraction helicopter appeared at the valley entrance, flying low and fast without lights or standard identification transponders. It touched down precisely at the designated landing zone, rotors continuing to spin for immediate departure. Victor and Mikhail sprinted from cover, boarding with the efficiency Elena had drilled into them during preparation. She maintained observation position until they were safely aboard, then made her own approach to the aircraft. As the helicopter lifted off, Elena looked north toward the operation where Santiago had been captured. Protocol Lazarus would begin within hours, the most ambitious and dangerous extraction the Phantom Network had ever attempted. A direct challenge to the system that had abandoned its own people and then hunted those who rescued them. The helicopter banked sharply, accelerating out of the valley before aerial assets could be redeployed to intercept them. Below, Elena could see vehicle lights converging on the extraction point. Too late to prevent their escape, but evidence of how close the operation had come to failure. Victor embraced his son again as they gained altitude, the emotional reality of reunion overtaking the tactical tension of escape. "I never lost faith," the old mechanic said, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Even when everyone told me to accept your death, to move on with my life, I knew you were out there somewhere." Mikhail's military composure had dissolved completely. Years of enforced stoicism breaking under the weight of unexpected salvation. "They told us everyone had forgotten us, that we were just ghosts no one was looking for anymore." "Not everyone forgot," Elena said quietly. "Not everyone accepted the convenient lies about training accidents and missing aircraft. Some people kept asking questions, kept looking for answers no matter how much the system tried to bury the truth." The pilot turned briefly from his instruments, his face obscured by tactical gear, but his voice carrying familiar conviction. "That's the real story the military courts will never understand," he said. "They think Phantom is just one person, a rogue operator they can eliminate to end the ghost extractions. They don't realize Phantom is an idea that can't be captured or killed." Elena recognized the voice with shock. "Jenkins? Captain Mark Jenkins?" The pilot nodded. "Santiago recruited me 6 months ago, after your network extracted my teammate from facility Darkwater. Said you might need additional pilot resources for high-risk operations." Elena processed this unexpected development, evidence that the Phantom Network had grown beyond her knowledge, expanding through the quiet recruitment of operators who understood the moral imperative that had driven her actions for 10 years. "Santiago was captured creating our diversion, she informed Jenkins. "Protocol Lazarus will initiate within hours." Jenkins nodded with grim determination. "We're already receiving signals from network assets positioning for the response. Operators from 6 countries, all extracted by phantom operations over the past decade. All ready to ensure Santiago doesn't disappear into a facility like Frost Point." As the helicopter flew toward the border and the safety beyond, Elena contemplated the unexpected legacy of her decision 10 years earlier. What had begun as one operator's refusal to abandon comrades had evolved into an international network of ghosts, officially dead or missing personnel, continuing to serve the deeper purpose of their oath from the shadows. The military courts had labeled her a deserter, a traitor who abandoned her post when her country needed her. They had hunted her for a decade, deploying every technological and tactical advantage to capture the ghost operator who exposed their darkest secrets. But what they had never understood, what they could never understand, was that true loyalty sometimes required disobeying orders that violated the fundamental principles of service. The military tribunal reconvened in the same sterile Pentagon conference room where they had declared Elena Reeves guilty 10 years earlier. The same mahogany table dominated the space. The same uncomfortable chairs seated the senior officers who would determine her fate. But everything else had changed. Major General Lawrence Harrington, who had presided over the original court-martial, studied the classified file before him with visible discomfort. His weathered face, once confident in its judgment, now carried the unmistakable tension of a man confronting evidence that contradicted everything he had believed to be true. "This testimony changes the entire framework of the case," he said finally, looking up at the other officers. "Satellite evidence confirming Commander Reeves' account of unauthorized detention facilities, sworn statements from 73 recovered personnel, intelligence confirming systematic abandonment of captured operators for political convenience." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "The evidence is conclusive, General," Colonel Catherine Winters replied. She had been the only dissenting voice during the original tribunal, the only officer who had questioned the rushed proceedings and limited evidence presentation. Commander Reeves didn't desert her post or abandon her duties. She continued fulfilling the core mission when official channels refused to do so. For 3 weeks, the military had been struggling with the fallout from Operation Lazarus. The Phantom Network had executed the most audacious extraction in its history, not from an enemy black site, but from a Special Activities Division detention center on American soil. Commander Santiago had been rescued from military custody by operators who officially didn't exist, using tactics that shouldn't have been possible against American security systems. More devastating than the tactical embarrassment was the strategic exposure that accompanied the operation. The Phantom Network had simultaneously released verified evidence of black site detention facilities to key media outlets and congressional oversight committees. Satellite imagery, operational logs, testimonies from recovered personnel. Irrefutable proof that American operators had been deliberately abandoned for political convenience, their families told they were dead while they remained in undocumented detention. Elena sat in a secure diplomatic facility in Geneva, monitoring the tribunal proceedings through encrypted channels provided by her extensive network. The past month had transformed her from hunted fugitive to protected whistleblower under international protocols. Her location was known to military intelligence, but any attempt to forcibly extract her would now trigger diplomatic incidents too costly to justify. Captain Mark Jenkins entered with a secure tablet displaying real-time updates from network operatives. "Santiago is safely across the Canadian border," he reported. "Victor and Mikhail Baranov have been granted asylum in Norway. The remaining operators from Frost Point have all been extracted and reunited with families who believed them dead." Elena nodded, accepting the tactical update while maintaining focus on the tribunal proceedings. The officers were reviewing testimony from operators she had rescued over the past decade, men and women who had been officially declared killed in action while actually being held in undocumented facilities like Nightshade and Frost Point. Major Thomas Reynolds, Delta Force, officially killed in a helicopter crash near the Pakistani border. General Harrington read from the file. Actually held at Facility Darkwater for 27 months before extraction by Operative Phantom. Captain Jennifer Lau, Naval Special Warfare, officially lost during training exercise off San Diego. Actually detained at Facility Echo Point for 18 months before extraction. The list continued. Specialized operators from every branch of military service, all officially dead, all actually abandoned by the system they had trusted to bring them home. All rescued by Elena and the network she had built from nothing while operating as a ghost. This tribunal must acknowledge a fundamental truth, Colonel Winters stated firmly. Commander Reeves didn't betray her oath of service. She upheld its most sacred principle, leave no one behind, when the official chain of command abandoned it for political convenience. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Elena's secure communication device activated with an incoming transmission from an unexpected source. Admiral William Reeves, her father, the career naval officer who had publicly disowned her after her disappearance. The man who had stood before news cameras 10 years earlier and declared that no daughter of mine would ever betray her oath of service. Elena, the Admiral's voice came through clearly despite the encryption. I've reviewed the evidence, all of it. I was wrong. The system was wrong. You weren't a deserter. You were the only one who truly remembered what service means. The admission stunned her into momentary silence. For 10 years, her father's condemnation had been among the heaviest burdens she carried. His belief in her guilt had never wavered, even as evidence mounted that the official narrative contained critical omissions. The tribunal is moving toward full exoneration, the Admiral continued. Your rank will be restored, your service record corrected. The officers who orchestrated the cover-up are facing court-martial themselves. That's not why I did it, Elena replied finally. I didn't become Phantom to eventually be vindicated or restored to rank. I did it because 73 people were abandoned by a system that promised never to leave them behind. I know, her father acknowledged. That's what makes it all the more unforgivable that we failed you. That I failed you. When you needed the system to listen, to investigate your claims properly, we chose convenient narratives over uncomfortable truths. In Washington, the tribunal had reached its conclusion. General Harrington's voice carried the weight of institutional recognition as he delivered the formal finding. This tribunal finds that Commander Elena Reeves did not desert her post or abandon her duties. Her actions, while outside standard operational parameters, were consistent with the fundamental principles of military service and the specific oath taken by Special Operations personnel. Colonel Winters added the critical addendum. Furthermore, this tribunal recommends immediate investigation into the command decisions that led to the deliberate abandonment of captured personnel and the subsequent efforts to conceal these actions from proper oversight. Elena closed the transmission, turning to Jenkins with renewed focus. The tribunal findings won't change anything for the operators, still in places like Nightshade and Frost Point. Political exoneration doesn't rescue people from black site detention. Jenkins nodded, understanding the implication. The network continues its operations? With modifications, Elena clarified. We're no longer ghosts operating against our own government. We're now officially sanctioned whistleblowers with international protection. That changes our tactical approach but not our fundamental mission. The diplomatic facility provided secure workspace for Elena to coordinate the next phase of operations. The evidence released during Operation Lazarus had exposed 3 black site facilities, but intelligence suggested at least 7 others remained operational. Facilities where personnel officially declared dead continued to be held in violation of international law and fundamental military ethics. Commander Santiago joined the planning session via secure video link from his location in Canada. His face showed evidence of the interrogation techniques employed during his brief detention, but his tactical focus remained undiminished. Military intelligence is scrambling to relocate detainees from the exposed facilities, he reported. We've intercepted transport orders for 3 separate operations within the next 72 hours. They're attempting to maintain the program while appearing to comply with congressional oversight. Elena studied the transportation routes Santiago had identified. They're consolidating operations at Facility Prometheus, the deep underground installation in Nevada desert. Remote enough to avoid casual observation, classified enough to deflect congressional inquiry. Prometheus was designed as the contingency location if other facilities were compromised. Santiago confirmed. Self-contained operations, minimal personnel footprint, maximum security protocols. Breaking in would be virtually impossible, even with our resources. We don't break in, Elena decided. We intercept the transports before they reach the facility. The transportation phase represents their moment of maximum vulnerability. The operational planning proceeded with the disciplined efficiency that had characterized the Phantom network for a decade. Intelligence assets identified precise transportation routes. Tactical teams were positioned at strategic intercept points. Communication protocols were established to coordinate simultaneous operations across 3 separate geographic regions. But unlike previous Phantom operations, these interceptions would not be conducted as ghosts operating in shadows. Elena had made a fundamental strategic shift from covert operations to transparent accountability. Each intercept team will include media representatives and congressional observers, she instructed. Real-time documentation of every aspect of the operation, no shadows, no deniability, full transparency. Santiago raised the obvious concern. Transparency creates tactical vulnerabilities. It limits our operational options and increases risk to personnel. It also ensures that what we uncover can't be buried again, Elena countered. The system maintained these black site operations precisely because they existed in shadows, outside oversight or accountability. Bringing everything into the light is the only way to ensure it ends permanently. The intercept operations commenced simultaneously across 3 states. Precision tactical interventions that halted military transports carrying personnel who officially didn't exist. In each location, media representatives documented the discovery of American operators who had been declared killed in action while actually being transported between undocumented detention facilities. Elena monitored the operations from the diplomatic facility in Geneva, coordinating tactical adjustments as military security teams responded to the interceptions. But the presence of media and congressional observers created an accountability firewall that prevented the use of lethal force or extraordinary measures to maintain secrecy. The system that had operated in shadows for decades was suddenly exposed to merciless daylight. Military transport officers, confronted with irrefutable evidence and real-time documentation, faced the impossible choice between following classified orders or acknowledging the human beings being transported as cargo. Many chose conscience over orders. Senior officers ordering the transport suddenly found themselves without cooperative personnel, willing to maintain the fiction that the recovered operators didn't exist. The system began unraveling from within as military personnel at every level refused to continue participating in the institutional betrayal of fellow operators. Admiral William Reeves appeared unexpectedly at the diplomatic facility in Geneva, having traveled directly from the tribunal proceedings in Washington. Security protocols required Elena to personally authorize his entry, creating an awkward reunion between father and daughter, separated by 10 years of misunderstanding and institutional betrayal. "The President has authorized me to offer you reinstatement," the Admiral said formally once they were alone. "Full restoration of rank with promotion to captain. Command of a new oversight unit ensuring proper protocols for personnel recovery in all operational theaters." Elena studied her father's face, noting the unfamiliar hesitation in a man accustomed to institutional certainty. "You're uncomfortable with the assignment," she observed. "I'm uncomfortable with everything about this situation," he admitted. 10 years believing my daughter had betrayed her oath, only to discover she was upholding it at greater personal cost than anyone should ever be asked to bear. 10 years condemning your actions while benefiting from a system that abandoned its most fundamental principles. You believed what the system told you to believe, Elena said without rancor. Just like the families of 73 operators believed their loved ones were dead because official notifications told them so. "That doesn't excuse my failure," the Admiral replied. "As your father, or as a naval officer, I should have questioned the narrative. Should have demanded better evidence before accepting your guilt." Elena recognized the genuine remorse beneath his military bearing. For a career officer who had built his life around institutional loyalty, acknowledging such fundamental failure represented a profound personal reckoning. "The reinstatement offer," she prompted, returning to the operational matter at hand. The Admiral straightened, resuming his formal demeanor. The President recognizes that rebuilding trust requires more than ceremonial apologies. The new oversight unit would have direct reporting authority to Congress and the Joint Chiefs. Unrestricted access to all special operations protocols regarding personnel recovery. Authority to conduct unannounced inspections of any detention facility, documented or undocumented. Elena considered the offer with the tactical assessment that had kept her alive through 10 years of ghost operations. The proposed unit represented significant institutional reform, a structural change that might prevent future abandonment of captured personnel. But it also represented reintegration into the same system that had betrayed her and 73 other operators when political convenience demanded it. "I have conditions," she said finally. "Non-negotiable requirements for acceptance." "The President anticipated you might," her father replied. "He authorized me to negotiate any reasonable terms. First, complete immunity for every member of the Phantom Network. No investigations, no recriminations, no professional consequences for participating in unauthorized extractions over the past decade." The Admiral nodded. "Already approved by the Attorney General. Formal immunity agreements are being prepared." Quote, "Second, immediate release and full restoration for all personnel recovered from black site facilities. Medical care, back pay, family reunification, and public acknowledgement of their continued service rather than desertion or death. In process, the Defense Department established a specialized task force 3 days ago to manage recovery and reintegration." Elena continued with her most significant demand. "Third, I select my own team for the oversight unit. No institutional filtering of personnel. No security reviews to exclude operators who participated in phantom operations." This requirement clearly exceeded the Admiral's pre-approved negotiating parameters. He hesitated before responding. "That would place formerly rogue operators in positions with access to highly classified operational details." "The security implications are precisely the point," Elena interrupted. "The people I select will be operators who demonstrated moral courage when the system demanded blind obedience. People who remembered their fundamental oath when politics demanded convenient compromise. Those are exactly the people needed to ensure this never happens again." The Admiral studied his daughter with new understanding. The tactical brilliance that had made her an exceptional special operations pilot had evolved into strategic insight regarding institutional reform. She wasn't seeking revenge or personal vindication. She was architecting a structural solution to systematic failure. "I'll present your conditions to the President," he conceded. "But speaking as someone who has observed his response to this situation, I believe he'll agree. The political cost of continued cover-up far exceeds the risk of genuine reform." 2 weeks later, Elena stood in the Pentagon briefing room, where the Phantom Network had once been designated a threat to national security. The same room where senior officers had authorized her pursuit as a deserter and traitor. Now she stood at the podium as Captain Elena Reeves, commanding officer of the newly established Special Operations Personnel Recovery Oversight Unit. Before her sat the recovered operators from black site facilities around the world, men and women officially declared dead who had continued existing in undocumented detention until the Phantom Network extracted them. Beside them sat families who had grieved their loss, conducted funerals with empty caskets, received folded flags with solemn gratitude, only to discover their loved ones had been abandoned by the system that promised to bring them home. "The unit we established today exists for one purpose," Elena stated firmly, "to ensure that no operator is ever again abandoned for political convenience. To guarantee that, leave no one behind, is more than a slogan. It is an inviolable commitment backed by structural accountability and transparent oversight." Commander Santiago, now her executive officer, stood at parade rest beside the podium. His face had healed from the interrogation techniques employed during his brief detention, but the experience had only strengthened his commitment to institutional reform. "For 10 years we operated as ghosts because the system denied our existence and the existence of our captured comrades," Elena continued. "Today we step into the light, not just as recovered personnel, but as the guardians against institutional failure. Our experiences of abandonment, of operating without support, of maintaining our oath when the chain of command betrayed it, uniquely qualify us to ensure this never happens again." The recovered operators and their families responded with solemn determination rather than celebration. They understood better than anyone the fragility of institutional promises and the personal cost of systemic betrayal. Their commitment wasn't to the system that had abandoned them, but to protecting future operators from suffering the same fate. Admiral William Reeves watched from the back of the room, witnessing his daughter's transformation from hunted fugitive to institutional reformer. The system had designated her a deserter for refusing to abandon her comrades. Now that same system was entrusting her with ensuring it never again betrayed its most sacred obligations. As the formal briefing concluded and the recovered operators dispersed to begin their new assignments, Elena found herself momentarily alone at the podium. 10 years earlier, she had stood in the same building, reporting through proper channels her discovery of abandoned personnel in undocumented detention facilities. She had been silenced, threatened, and ultimately forced to become phantom, to uphold the oath the system itself had forgotten. Now she stood as the institutional embodiment of that same oath. Not because the system had suddenly discovered its conscience, but because she and 73 other ghosts had forced accountability through their refusal to accept comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. Captain Mark Jenkins approached with the day's operational briefing. Inspection teams are deploying to verify the closure of all identified black site facilities. Congressional oversight committees have approved unrestricted access protocols. Media representatives have been assigned to documentation teams. Elena accepted the briefing with the same focused determination that had characterized her 10 years as Phantom. The mission remained unchanged, even if the operational parameters had transformed completely. Ensure that no operator was abandoned. Guarantee that leave no one behind was more than a recruiting slogan. There's something else, Jenkins added, his expression uncharacteristically hesitant. We've received intelligence about a previously unknown facility designated Omega Point, satellite confirmation of transport activity consistent with personnel movement. No official documentation in any military system. Elena processed this information with the tactical clarity that had kept her alive as a ghost operator. The system hadn't fully reformed. It had simply hidden its darkest operations more effectively. The work of ensuring accountability hadn't ended with her reinstatement or the establishment of the oversight unit. Prepare a full inspection team, she ordered. Congressional observers, media documentation, medical personnel for recovered operators. We deploy in 6 hours. Standard protocols? Jenkins asked. Elena considered the question carefully. The standard approach would involve notification to command structure, formal inspection requests, procedural compliance with institutional requirements. The approach that gave the system time to hide evidence, relocate personnel, maintain plausible deniability. No, she decided. Ghost protocols. We arrive without warning. We document everything before anyone can obscure the truth. We bring everyone home. Jenkins nodded with grim satisfaction. The team will be ready. Ghost protocols initiated. As Elena prepared for the operation, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from disgraced deserter to institutional reformer. The military courts had declared her guilty of abandoning her post and betraying her oath. For 10 years, she had operated as a ghost while the system hunted her as a traitor. But the satellite evidence had revealed the truth they could no longer deny, that Elena Reeves had never stopped serving, never abandoned her oath, never betrayed the principles that defined true military service. While the system constructed comfortable narratives about training accidents and operational casualties, she had been rescuing the people that same system had sacrificed for political convenience. The oversight unit represented institutional acknowledgement of systematic failure. But Elena harbored no illusions about the permanence of reform. Systems naturally reverted to shadows and deniability when accountability became inconvenient. The existence of Facility Omega Point confirmed her suspicion that genuine reform required constant vigilance and unflinching commitment to transparency. She would continue the work she had begun as Phantom, not from the shadows as a hunted ghost, but from within the system as its officially designated conscience. The mission remained unchanged: ensure that no operator was abandoned, that no family received an empty casket while their loved one remained in undocumented detention, that leave no one behind was an inviolable commitment rather than a conditional slogan. As her team prepared for deployment to Facility Omega Point, Elena carried the same determined resolve that had sustained her through 10 years as a ghost. The military courts had called her a deserter until satellite evidence revealed she had been the only one truly honoring her oath. Now she would ensure that no operator ever again faced the impossible choice between following orders and fulfilling their deeper commitment to never abandon their comrades. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.